chapter the 4th. There were in that country, where our Savior performed his miracles, certain people who were called Pharisees. They were very proud, and believed that no people were good but themselves, and they were all afraid of Jesus Christ, because he taught the people better. So were the Jews in general. Most of the inhabitants of that country were Jews. Our Savior, walking once in the fields with his disciples on a Sunday, which the Jews called, and still call, the Sabbath, they gathered some ears of the corn that was growing there to eat. This, the Pharisees said, was wrong, and in the same way, when our Savior went into one of their churches, they were called synagogues, and looked compassionately on a poor man who had his hand all withered and wasted away, these Pharisees said, "Is it right to cure people on a Sunday?" Our Savior answered them by saying, "If any of you had a sheep, and it fell into a pit, would you not take it out, even though it happened on a Sunday? And how much better is a man than a sheep?" Then he said to the poor man, "Stretch out thine hand." And it was cured immediately, and was smooth and useful like the other. So Jesus Christ told them, "You may always do good, no matter what the day is." There was a city called Nain, into which our Savior went soon after this, followed by great numbers of people, and especially by those who had sick relatives, or friends, or children. For they brought sick people out into the streets and roads through which he passed, and cried out to him to touch them. And when he did, they became well. Going on, in the midst of this crowd, and near the gate of the city, he met a funeral. It was the funeral of a young man, who was carried on what is called a bier, which was open, as the custom was in that country, and is now in many parts of Italy. His poor mother followed the bier, and wept very much, for she had no other child. When our Savior saw her, he was touched to the heart to see her so sorry, and said, "Weep not." Then, the bearers of the bier standing still, he walked up to it and touched it with his hand, and said, "Young man, arise." The dead man, coming to life again at the sound of the Savior's voice, rose up and began to speak. And Jesus Christ, leaving him with his mother, ah, how happy they both were, went away. By this time the crowd was so very great that Jesus Christ went down to the waterside to go in a boat to a more retired place. And in the boat he fell asleep, while his disciples were sitting on the deck. While he was sleeping, a violent storm arose, so that the waves washed over the boat, and the howling wind so rocked and shook it that they thought it would sink. In their fright, the disciples awoke our Savior and said, "Lord, save us, we are so lost." Or we are lost. He stood up, and raising his arm, said to the rolling sea and to the whistling wind, "Peace, be still." And immediately it was calm and pleasant weather, and the boat went safely on through the smooth waters. When they came to the other side of the waters, they had to pass a wild and lonely burying ground that was outside the city to which they were going. All burying grounds were outside cities in those times. In this place there was a dreadful madman who lived among the tombs, and howled all day and all night, so that it made travelers afraid to hear him. They had tried to chain him, but he broke his chains. He was so strong, and he would throw himself on the sharp stones and cut himself in the most dreadful manner, crying and howling all the while. When this wretched man saw Jesus Christ a long way off, he cried out, "It is the Son of God! O Son of God, do not torment me." Jesus, coming near him, perceived that he was torn by an evil spirit, and cast the madness out of him, and into a herd of swine or pigs, who were feeding close by, and who directly ran headlong down a steep place leading into the sea, and were dashed to pieces. Now Herod, the son of that cruel king who murdered the innocents, reigning over the people there, and hearing that Jesus Christ was doing these wonders, and was giving sight to the blind, and causing the deaf to hear, and the dumb to speak, and the lame to walk, and that he was followed by multitudes and multitudes of people. Herod, hearing this, said, "This man is a companion and friend of John the Baptist." John was the good man, you recollect, who wore a garment made of camel's hair, and ate wild honey. Herod had taken him prisoner, because he taught and preached to the people, and had him then locked up in the prisons of his palace. While Herod was in this angry humor with John, his birthday came, and his daughter Herodias, who was a fine dancer, danced before him to please him. She pleased him so much that he swore an oath that he would give her whatever she would ask for. Then she said, "Father, give me the head of John the Baptist in a charger," for she hated John, and was a wicked, cruel woman. The king was sorry, for though he had John prisoner, he did not wish to kill him, but, having sworn that he would give her what she asked for, he sent some soldiers down into the prison, with directions to cut off the head of John the Baptist, and give it to Herodias. This they did, and took it to her, as she had said, in a charger, which was a kind of dish. When Jesus Christ heard from the apostles of this cruel deed, he left that city, and went with them, after they had privately buried John's body in the night, to another place.